Cricket Life Stories with me, Neel Khagram, and today we're joined by Yorkshire's head coach, Andrew Gale. Andrew, thank you for your time. How is
Good to be here.
self-isolation treating you?
Yeah, it's hard work. I've got three young kids under 8 years old, so homeschooling. I've come to the realisation that I'm never going to be a school teacher. But yeah, keeping them occupied and keeping them in the house isn't easy. But it's a frustrating time, given that we've just worked 4.5 months in the indoor school. Put the hard yards in, and then for the season not to start like it has is frustrating. But as we all know, there's a bigger picture here, and hopefully people can stay safe and be healthy, and we'll come out the other side.
Let's take it all the way back with yourself. So born in Dewsbury, West Yorkshire. Where did the love of cricket first start?
Yeah, I wasn't really brought up in a cricketing family. I mean, my granddad played cricket, but my dad never played cricket. He was a musician. So it happened by accident, really, for me, that I just tagged along with some lads who lived on my street. And, there was a big main road at the top of the street, which there was a cricket ground across the road. So I was never allowed to cross the road, but I just ended up sneaking across, and every Friday night, my mum thought I was just playing my friends and I was going to the cricket club with them. And after about 5 or 6 weeks of going, I asked if I could have a cricket bat, and she took me to the shop and told her that I'd been going to my local club, and just fell in love with it from there, really. And it happened by chance that I got a letter from the club saying that I was going to a district trial, and it turned out it was a Yorkshire trial, and I ended up getting in the under 11s, and I went right through the ranks.
So let's go back to your club career. What was the name called of your local club?
I started at a club called Gummersall Cricket Club, which they're in the Bradford League. I played there till I was around 13, 14, and then I moved to Cleckheaton Club, which I've always classed as my home club, if you like, the club that I've had the longest affiliation with. Played Bradford League cricket there until I eventually played in the Saturday Academy in the Yorkshire League.
And then, as you said, you came through the ranks with Yorkshire. Any other household names that came through with you?
Yeah, Brez was in there, Tim Bresnan. He played in the under 11s. Who else did I play with in the ranks? Mark Lawson played a bit of first class cricket. Joe Sayers played a bit of first class cricket for Yorkshire. Richard Pyra, who's now the bowling coach at Yorkshire. So we came through. Steve Patterson. He was from East Yorkshire, so they had their own team, which was like Humberside classed as then. But we had a team that sort of came through all together, and our academy side was, we had a sort of golden 2 or 3 years where we had a really strong side. We cleaned up with all the junior trophies, and I guess that's why it was so special when we all came through together and eventually won the county championship together, because we'd sort of been on the journey all the way through. So yeah, it was a strong outfit, and we've always been blessed with good young talent at Yorkshire.
And then you, as a youth, you also got international recognition. England under 15, all the way through up to under 19.
Yeah, I think that the under 15s was probably where I started to take my cricket seriously, because I'd always wanted to be a footballer. I'd played a bit at Huddersfield Town, my club that I support, and I'd been to Oldham. I'd been scouted at Sheffield Wednesday, but I was never quite good enough. I was too slow, I think, and too podgy.
What position did you play?
I played left back, and then later I played a bit in centre midfield. So I sort of touted around the clubs, and I was never good enough. And when I got to about 14 or 15, it's when I thought, well, I want to be a professional sportsman. Probably cricket's my way in, and I started to take it a bit more seriously. And I started scoring more runs, and ended up getting an academy contract, and then going on to play for England under 15s and under 19s.
Any memorable moments during that that stint with
Yeah,
England at that time?
I think the England under 15s was a funny story because people know about the Bunbury Festival. So we went with the north of England, and what they did were you had 3 games, and then they pick a team out of the 3 games to play a 4th game on the 4th day to play against sort of a private schools, England 11, and then they'd pick a team out of them to eventually play for England. So I'd had 3 games, and my whole family came down. It was down at Exmouth, Exeter. We'd stayed at the university. My grandma and granddad came down, and my mum and dad and my sister to watch, and played the 3 games. I had a high score of about 30. I think I only got into double figures once. So I packed my bags and I rang my mum and dad. I said, look, well, we can set off tomorrow morning at 9 o'clock and get on the road. I'll be heading back. I don't think I'll get the nod. And they read the teams out first thing in the morning, and my name was in it. And it was actually Paul Fabris was the coach, who later went on to coach Sri Lanka and Yorkshire, and then assistant coach at England. So I got picked for that, and I went out that day and I got 133 or something like that, I think it was. And at the end of that game, I got picked for England. So you look back on moments in your career where you think, if I wouldn't have got runs there, or I would have got runs. I think I nicked off on about 30 in that game, and I was given not out by some old lad who couldn't hear the massive nick. I think first slip nearly caught it, and I went on to get 130. And you look back at little things that happen in your career that changes your career, and I definitely look back at that and think, yeah, that was a moment where I was a bit lucky, but also, right time, right place.
And then you made your debut for Yorkshire in 2004, I believe. How old were you then? And do you feel you were ready?
No, I was probably, 18, 19. I'd made my one-day debut against Worcester after coming off the back of a double 100 in the second team. And like all young players, you think you're ready. You're chomping at the bit, and I'm good to go. I want to play first-class cricket. I'm scoring runs in second-team cricket. And I was a slow starter. It took me a while to get to grips. It took me at least 2 or 3 years to really start to establish myself in first-class cricket. It was just a massive jump from second team to first team. I didn't know my own game. I didn't know myself as a person, really, and it took a little bit of time. But I get with young players, that's why you've always got to persist a little bit with them, because the only way they learn, really, the only way I learned was by being in that setup and making mistakes. And eventually the penny drops and you start to know your own game. You know how to score runs, how to manage your emotions and your feelings, and you start to become more consistent.
So in between that period, I would say, was it fair to say that you played more T20 one-day cricket?
Yeah, I mean, the one-day game was changing a little bit then, so it sort of fitted with me. I was a bit of a dasher. I went in, I could score runs from the first ball. So you were going through that period of when, you bat 50 overs and get, 230, 240 to sending someone in a power play and taking that down. So I opened the batting, and I probably established myself more in white ball cricket than I did in red ball. And people always had question marks over whether I'd ever be able to do it in the red ball game, because my technique was quite loose. But, like I say, when I start to find a method and realise what my own game looked like, start to become more consistent, and I could bat a longer period of time.
And you also captained England under-19s. Were you a natural leader from a young age?
I think I've always had that tendency to be a natural leader. I think, having captained numerous Yorkshire age groups teams and come through, and, captained the England Lions, I think people always saw me as quite a passionate guy who people would follow. I was never afraid to voice my opinions, and I think people respected that. So I think I was always seen as a bit of a natural leader.
Yeah, so you became Yorkshire first team captain in 2009, the youngest player in the post-war era, I believe. again, same kind of question. What kind of, in your opinion, does make a good captain?
What makes a good captain? I think first and foremost, you've got to have respect to your peers. And I probably wasn't as experienced as I would have liked to be at that moment in time. I always wanted to be a captain. It probably came 2 years earlier than I would have liked. And I think captaincy is one of those things that you should never go looking for it. I think it's the sort of thing that comes to you. But in my early stages of captaincy, I was very lucky that I had some real good, supportive senior players around me. People like Jacques Rudolph and Anthony McGrath, Gerard Brophy, these sorts of guys who were had a lot of wool on the back, very experienced, and they supported me. They didn't want the job. They thought I was the right man for the job, and they got behind me, and that really helped, galvanise the dressing room and help my respect as a leader.
And then 2014, winning the championship, the first time the club have won it in 13 years. Proud moment?
Yes and no. I mean, we won the championship, and it's something that I've worked hard for. We went on a real journey. It was a real roller coaster of a journey, really, from first taking the captaincy over in 2010 and going close right down to the last day of the season. We could have won the championship after being favourites to be relegated. And then the following year, we got relegated. 2012, we came straight back up. 2013, I think we finished second or third, and then we'd sort of worked towards and learnt a lot of valuable lessons. In 2014, we ended up winning it, but obviously it was well documented at the time. I couldn't lift the trophy, so I'd got banned with an altercation with Ashwell Prince in a tough Roses game, and I was suspended for 4 games. So the ECB said that I couldn't lift the trophy. So it was on we were at Trent Bridge. I accepted the suspension and what have you. I was in the wrong. Held my hands up, and it was Colin Graves, who's now the chairman of the ECB, who was our chairman at the time. He came to the dressing room on the last day, an hour before we were going to win the trophy, and he said, "Look, the word from the ECB is if you lift the trophy, they're going to deduct 20, 30 points, I think it was, from Yorkshire." So he said, "You can't lift the trophy." So it was a bittersweet moment, having all my family down at Trent Bridge, ready, that moment that we'd worked up to for a period of time, and dream come true, wearing the Yorkshire badge from 10 years old, to go and have your moment as captain to lift the county championship. And then only to see Rooty, who played like 2 games all year, go lift the championship was, like I say, a bittersweet moment. So, it was quite a sad day for me, really, and that probably made me more motivated to win it again.
I was going to say, then you won the championship again the following year. Must have made it extra special then for yourself personally.
It did, because I still felt like I had unfinished business. Like, there's a history of teams winning championships and getting relegated the year after. That happens a lot in cricket. And I'd looked through the history books and seen, all the correlation of it. So I sort of sat down with the senior players when we came back to training in the November after winning the championship, and we'd had all our excessive celebrations and paraded the trophy around here, there and everywhere all over Yorkshire. But I said to the senior lads, about 6 or 7 of them, "Look, I don't want this to be a flash in the pan. I want this to create our own legacy." You get, sometimes at Yorkshire, you get a lot of stick from some older generations about how many times they won championships, and the teams of the 60s and the 50s and all that. So I said, we wanted to create our own legacy. How are we going to go about this? And it was Ryan Sidebottom actually who spoke up, and he said, "Look, I'd played in a team at Notts that were relegated the year after winning championship, and these were the reasons. People turning up late, not training as hard, wearing the wrong kit, an expectation that someone else would get the runs or take the wickets, and just let the foot off the gas a little bit." So we sort of made a collective effort to say, as a senior group, we're going to be right on it, maybe over the top at times, and our standards were really, really high. And to match that, we had some bloody good players, right time, right place. You look at people like Jonny Bairstow, He was just on the cusp of getting a call up for England. They had a point to prove. He'd been in the setup, then out of the setup, and he had to come back to us. And I think he averaged just short of 100 that year. We had Rooty for a number of games. So to go on and win the championship and win it at Lords was very, very special, and eventually got my hands on the trophy.
And you mentioned Joe Root and Jonny Bairstow. Obviously, you've seen them come through as youngsters, as a senior player then. What makes them so special, in your opinion?
Very different characters. I mean, I spoke a bit earlier about when we got relegated in 2011, and that was a magic moment for us as a club, really, although we were distraught to get relegated. But what it meant was that going into the second division, we could play all these young lads all at once. They were all ready to play, and they could play without the pressure of first division cricket. So you had people like Gary Balance, Rooty, Jonny, Adil played a little bit by then, but Azim Rafiq, Moin Ashraf, these sorts of guys. So it gave them an opportunity to learn about the game at a slightly lower level. No disrespect to the second division, but first division cricket is hard cricket. And it gave them a confidence, because the first full year they played, they got promoted to the first division. They thought they were invincible. But watching these guys go about the business up close, I mean, Jonny was immensely talented. Well, he still is. He's just a freak at times. There's things that he can do. If he's got a point to prove, he will prove it. Very stubborn in the way he goes about his business, but an immense self-belief. And Rooty he's a tremendously hard worker. He's a coach's dream and a coach's nightmare in a way, because he comes back and to Yorkshire now, and the amount of balls he hits in the nets, it's brilliant, because he sets a standard for all the rest of the lads. So they all look at him and go, wow, he's hit balls for 2-3 hours there. That's why he's so good. That's why he's one of the best batsmen in the world. I'm going to do that to make myself the best batsman in the world. But what you get then is, 8, 9, 10 blokes queuing up wanting 3 hours in the nets, which your shoulder's dropping off. But he sets a standard. But the thing about Joe is he hasn't changed. He's very, very level. And what you find with the best players is they go through bad patches, but they come out of it a lot quicker than other players, because they're very level in the way they go about the business. He don't get too down if he's come off the back of 2-3 ducks. He don't get too up, even if he's got a couple of hundreds or he's in tremendous form. He's still that level, grounded character, and that's served him really well. And obviously there's a lot of skill and talent in there as well to match up with that, and that's why he's the best player in the world.
And this might be rumour, but just maybe you can shed some light on it. Is there a Yorkshire tradition where they pass on, say, like a thigh pad or a chest guard? So I've heard like Joe Root's been passed down like a thigh pad from Geoffrey Boycott to Michael Vaughan, then to himself. Is there some kind of Yorkshire tradition there? Or?
Not that I've heard of. I mean, players do pass stuff down. I don't know if Rooty wears Vaughan's thigh pad. I can't imagine it'd be still held together. But not that I know of. I mean, we have got a tremendous history and tradition, and you do get, there's the capping system, and we're very proud of that.
Maybe you can shed some light on the capping system. How does it work? How do you get your full?
Well, I think it's changed quite a bit now. I mean, it used to be, you just used to go to the board and it used to be on opinion. So I think it changed because of me. There was a disagreement about whether I should have been capped or not. I was about 24, 25. I'd scored 2,000 or 3,000 first-class runs, and I was still second-team capped. And I think one member of the board said they didn't agree that I should get capped. So after that, they brought in some structure. So now you've got to score X amount of runs if you're a batter, and X amount of wickets if you're a bowler or an all-rounder, or different formats, because it was always seen that you'd only get a cap from playing championship cricket. But now, obviously, you have white ball specialists, and they're beneficial to the club, and they win your games in white ball cricket, but they might not play any red ball cricket. So there's structures in place now where if you pass them milestones, I don't know what they are off the top of my head, but if you pass them, you get capped. And it's a proud moment, because if you walk into the players' dining room, there's a full wall of the players that have been capped. And, I think we're up to cap number something like 184. So if you think that Yorkshire's a 128 years, 29 years, something like that, that there's only, 184 players or something being capped, it makes you feel quite privileged. And you look up at them players that are on there, some of the legends of the game, the Huttons, the Boycotts, these sorts of guys, and you go, wow, I've been capped for Yorkshire. It's quite special. And I think that when people come to the club and get capped and they have to earn it, people like Liam Plunkett, Jack Brooks, David Willey, I think they're a little bit in awe of that, of the history and tradition. And I think it also can put some players off, because it does come with an almost overwhelming pressure of playing for Yorkshire. Like I say, when you walk into the ground and there's, as soon as you drive into the ground, in front of you there's a museum, and there's the silhouettes of Yorkshire players that have captained England. And you've got to be able to handle that pressure of, you're playing for a big club here and you're expected to win trophies. These are the players that have gone before you. And that creates a pressure in itself. And players who come from the outside, they either sink or swim with that.
And then going back to yourself, 2016, retirement came, but then the opportunity to become first-team coach. How did that conversation come about? What was the thoughts going through your head during that period? Were you ready to retire from playing the game?
Yeah, 2016 was a frustrating year. We went close with the championship. The last day of the season, we lost to Middlesex at Lords and they won it. But my form had been poor. I'd lost a bit of hunger for the game, if I'm being honest. I wasn't still improving. And I had a conversation halfway through the season with Martin Moxon about, potential retirement. I said, look, I had time left on my contract, but I wasn't enjoying the game. I lost a bit of love for it. And would there be any coaching opportunities down the line, whether that's the following year or 2 years, whatever. And he said, look, you're still valuable to the club. Your leadership's still outstanding. We all go through loads as older players where you lose a little bit of passion for it, but it'll come back. So I was like, yeah, fine. So I continued to work hard. And I made a few scores. I think I made an 80 against Lancashire at Old Trafford, and I came off. And I didn't get that buzz, when you drive away from the ground, you've made a good contribution. I used to always get that real buzz that I'd done something special. And it just felt like I'd come off, and it was like, yeah, I got 80, so what? It didn't really feel like anything. So got to the end of the year, and Jason Gillespie was leaving to go back to Australia. So I met with Martin Moxon about going through the potential candidates and who'd applied for the job. And he just said, look, I've gone through the list of applicants, and I think there's only one man for the job. And I said, oh, who's that? He said, would you consider retiring and taking the role as head coach? I'll give you the weekend to think about it. So I said, yeah, well, it just felt right. I went home, spoke to my wife and my family, and it just felt right. And again, just like the captaincy, it probably came a couple of years earlier than I would have gone for it. And it was a tough transition. It's been a tough baptism, really, because I've been leading the club through a bit of a transitional stage. After winning, having them successful years, came to a stage where them players were getting older. We needed to move some on and bring through the next generation. So we've had 2 or 3 years of transition, and we got to the point again now where we're ready to win and challenge at the top end of the table again. And that's probably what makes this period more frustrating.
How much was an influence on Jason Gillespie on your coaching career? Obviously, you are your own man. You've got your own ideas, but did you take some stuff from him that you?
Yeah, massively. I'm still in touch with Diz all the time. We're very different people, but what Diz did for the club is he created a really good environment, and he gave players a lot of freedom. So I think he made me think differently about things. We'd always done things in a traditional manner at Yorkshire, and he came in and he was like, if you don't want to train today, lads, don't train. I just expect you to perform well, and if we win, we go out and we have a beer together and enjoy it. But I expect you to work hard when you come into training. And he just give players responsibility. And around that time, he had a decent set of senior players as well, and a solid captain in myself, and we had a really good relationship. So I learned a lot off Dizzy. He was very level as character. He was a fantastic coach, and he made me think differently about coaching and leadership.
And the hardest aspect of your role, do you reckon there's too much cricket being played, or anything else?
No, I like loads of cricket. I mean, we're lucky at Yorkshire because we've got a squad that can handle all that cricket. We've got a squad of, including our England players, I think it's like 32 players. So, more cricket the merrier for me. I used to like the 16 county championship season, but the schedule is brutal. But you've got to have the players to manage that, and it's a real squad effort. But the biggest challenges for me, I'd say, leaving players out. That's tough. Things that play in your mind, making them big decisions. That's probably the toughest aspect of the job, really, and managing expectation. As I said, you're expected to win trophies at Yorkshire, but it's not always possible. The Yorkshire public would like us to win with 11 homegrown players. In this day and age, that's probably not going to happen, but we do back our academy. We're big believers in bringing our own players through. But to do that, it takes time. And that transitional stage of spoke earlier about my journey, about you only learn from being there and playing. You've got to go through that, and it takes time.
And do you think the game is changing in the sense that players are becoming more specialist, say, T20, 50 over white ball players and red ball players? I asked the question was, obviously you've got Adil Rashid, he's got a white ball contract. In the game as a whole, how do you see things moving forward?
It's tough. The modern day cricketer, it's tough because we're expecting them to be able to train and perform totally different skill sets. We had an appraisal with a player at the end of the year. He's a young player, and we talked about his red ball cricket batting, about the ball swinging and seaming, and we'd like him to play the ball later. But in white ball cricket, we want him to bat middle order and finish games off in T20 cricket, which means hitting the ball out in front and practicing his power hitting. So they're two completely different ends of the scale, and to be able to do both is hard work. You're not seeing many players around the world now dominating the two formats, the white ball and the red ball game. So I do feel for the current player. It's tough, and you don't get that time to practice either, not in county cricket anyway, because if the season this year, if it had gone to plan, you've got 6 or 7 championship games, and then 1 or 2 days practice before you go into T20. So last year we had a number of players who they changed the techniques, they changed the trigger movements, they changed the grips, and it's very, very difficult. This year we're meant to have 2 championship games nestled in and around the T20. So I do feel for the modern day cricket, and hence why people are probably going a bit more specialist. Rash, it's one of the main reasons is because of his body, but again, for him to be successful with the red ball, he's got to give the ball flight, guile, and get revs on it. And he's had his success in white ball cricket by probably bowling a bit quicker into the pitch, bowling more googlies, bowling wicket to wicket. And again, it's totally different in red ball cricket. So the skill sets are so far apart.
And then you talked about, if we get any cricket this year, Yorkshire are ready now to go and challenge. The signing of Bairstow Malan, a big statement from one of the other traditional clubs, Middlesex, their skipper. Big statement.
Yeah, it was a big statement for us, and you know, our red ball batting's been poor for a number of years. You know, below average of our expectation, and you know, like I said, we've gone through a transition, and we wanted to find out about our own players, and we've found out which ones are good enough and which ones aren't, and we needed a bit of experience around as well. We've got Gary Balance and Adam Live who are very experienced, but we needed another head in there to take the pressure off them young players as well. You know, they're going to be inconsistent, and they're allowed to be inconsistent. But if someone in Dowage, you're getting someone who has been consistent, and you know, nothing will phase him. He'll soak up the pressure in them moments where, you know, tough pitches or when you're not scoring at rate. But it was a statement from us in all formats, really, to say, you know, we've gone through our transition now. We're ready to come out of this, and we're signing one of the country's best players because we want to win trophies.
Well, Andrew, appreciate your time today. Shame that, you know, we've had to do this via video and not face to face, but this is a given the circumstances. Fingers crossed we do get some cricket this year, and yeah, all the best for the upcoming months. Stay safe.
Brilliant. Thanks, mate.
Cheers. Neel Khagram, Cricket Life Stories, Andrew Gale. Thank you.
Thanks, Neil.
Thank you.